There is already fallout from a Channel 4 I-team investigation into a well-known Nashville lawyer and judge. Today, a formal complaint was filed with the Board of Professional Responsibility against both Judge Casey Moreland and attorney Brian Lewis.
As the I-team first reported last night, it all started with the death of a woman named Lee Terry. Police concluded she killed herself last spring. The detectives' report into her death is now public. And now so are allegations that sexual favors may have affected the outcome of court cases. The I-team's Nancy Amons joins us now with the latest in her investigation.
Well, General Sessions Judge Casey Moreland was interviewed by Metro detectives after Lee Terry's death. He was one of the people who was with Terry on a trip to Alabama last year. Now, we've been trying to interview him about allegations that came out in this police investigation, and we've been trying to ask him about another woman's court fines and how they disappeared. This may be the last video taken of Lee Terry alive. Security camera footage from the Stallman building. It's now in the evidence vault. Police say the night of May 4th, 2016, Terry walked her dog Lana one last time, went into her 9th floor apartment alone, then shot and killed herself. A detective's investigation would discover Terry had returned just a few days earlier from a trip to Mobile, Alabama.
Just know that she was irate.
Natalie Amos was on that trip. What was supposed to be a fishing weekend ended prematurely for Terry. Eyewitnesses told police Terry kept arguing with her traveling companions, especially Brian Lewis. He's the man police would discover was paying her rent at the Stallman. Lewis told police during a recorded interview they were friends with benefits. Amos told police Terry had threatened to expose an affair between Terry and Lewis and threatened to divulge something she had recently seen on Lewis's computer.
She threatened him, and she's like, the gig's up, and she said, and I'm not talking about your wife.
Amos at first didn't want to name another person who was on the trip, Judge Casey Moreland, a close friend of attorney Brian Lewis.
I know you don't want to mention somebody, but
If you need it.
I just need to know who we're talking about.
Casey Moreland.
Okay.
But Moreland's name was in the spotlight in the detective's report. During the investigation into Terry's death, allegations were made by Amos and 2 of Terry's former boyfriends. Their interviews are in the police file. All say Terry claimed she had had sex with Moreland in his office in exchange for a lighter sentence on a DUI case.
She was like, Natalie, I was out of options. It was that, or I was looking at serious jail time.
We were not able to independently confirm the allegation. Court records show that Moreland was not the judge when Terry's charges were reduced. We do see Moreland's stamp on a document appearing to cut her probation short by a few months. Natalie Amos has a history of drunk driving charges too.
I got 2 DUIs back to back.
She says that in 2015, she was struggling to pay her fines, $1,200, and mentioned it to her friend Lee Terry.
And she said, well, I can call Casey. And I was like, Casey? She said, Judge Moreland.
The 3 met at Pinewood Social. Amos says she was hoping to get more time to pay the fines since she was working.
He just said, text me, this information. And I did. And I just really thought I was going to get an extension, and he just went away.
The court's computer system shows that on July 14, 2015, her fines were all waived. Natalie was declared an indigent. She didn't have to pay anything, even though she had a job.
Be granted, Shirley, you may go.
Forgiving fines isn't that unusual. In fact, we did a story in August 2015 about how many fines Judge Moreland waived. There is a process. Someone fills out a form listing their income. The judge reviews it and says yes or no. Natalie Amos says she never went to court, never filled out that form.
No.
Nothing.
No. And I didn't even know about that until today, honestly.
There's a form you were supposed to fill out to say you are applying for indigency.
I didn't know about that until today.
Did you ever go to court?
No.
It just disappeared?
Yes.
I checked, and Amos's name wasn't on the docket that day. There is a motion for indigency in the court file. It's only signed by Casey Moreland, and there's no date. Natalie thanked the judge by text messages. She saved the text she says Moreland sent her in exchange. Your fees, fines, and court costs are taken care of. Now you officially owe me. Ha ha.
When I got that text, and I was like, okay, I see.
She says she didn't play ball. There was no quid pro quo. But she says she and Moreland did have an intimate relationship later. The I-Team approached Judge Moreland. We had a lot of questions.
This looks like a firing squad.
We asked for an interview about the Alabama trip, about Lee Terry, and about Natalie.
Natalie Amos.
We asked to sit down and talk on camera.
All right, well, let me try to figure out what a good time will be.
Okay.
We've continued to press the judge for an interview. He declined.
How many times do you think police officers hear this from people they pull over? I know so-and-so.
Our Channel 4 I-Team found it worked when a judge intervened in a traffic stop for a female friend. Nancy Amons joins us now with more on the investigation.
Well, what happened was the end result was a woman was allowed to drive away on a revoked license after Judge Casey Moreland made a phone call. And we want to warn you, there is some adult content in the end of the story.
The dreaded blue lights, you're being pulled over. If you have friends in high places, maybe you're not getting a ticket or going to jail. Well, that's what happened here on 6th Avenue South downtown on June 16th at 3:20 in the afternoon. Motorcycle officer Michael Douglas of Central Precinct tells me he's just starting his shift when he notices a woman driving without a seatbelt and her tags are expired.
93.6 Peabody, Tennessee.
He calls dispatch to find out if she has a valid driver's license. She doesn't.
Comes back to a Natalie Amos, D. David, revoked.
She's Natalie Amos, a very close friend of General Sessions Judge Casey Moreland. She says she calls the judge, then they send a series of text messages back and forth. She shared what she said were the texts between them. Moreland texts her, find out the officer's name. She writes, Michael Douglas. Moreland writes, if I need to talk to him, I will. She texts Moreland that the officer is running her license, adding, it's the last thing I need right now. Moreland texts, I got you, girl. Then he texts, what's happening? Did you drop my name? But the officer continues to write her a ticket until Moreland makes a phone call to the officer's supervisor at Central Precinct. Metro Police verify what happened next in a written statement. That Sergeant Mark Byrne, Douglas's supervisor, was contacted by Judge Moreland. Police say Moreland tells the sergeant that Amos was on the way to his office for a meeting. The statement says Byrne perceived that Judge Moreland wanted the motorist to be allowed to continue to his office. Byrne rides his police motorcycle over to where Amos is stopped to convey that message to the officer. Moreland texts Amos that help is on the way, and she writes, sweet. Amos is allowed to drive away on a revoked license. She doesn't get a citation for it, just the ticket for no seatbelt and expired tags. As we've been reporting in our investigation into Judge Moreland, it isn't the only time the judge acted on Amos's behalf. That ticket for the seatbelt and registration violation, Moreland sent the traffic court clerk a letter recalling the ticket. She didn't have to pay it. It was retired. And we told you Judge Moreland helped erase $1,200 in old court fines that Amos owed. He declared her indigent, even though she had a job.
I mean, my $1,200 was just gone.
So what kind of business did Amos have with Moreland at his office the day she was stopped by the motorcycle officer? Amos showed us texts she said were between her and Moreland. The texts back and forth show they didn't have a meeting planned, no official business. In fact, when she was stopped, Amos was on her way to meet the judge at a bar called the Batter's Box. After they met for drinks, Amos said they did go back to the courthouse to have sex in Moreland's office. Moreland texts her at 6:30 that night, damn, you're hot. The next afternoon, Amos texts that she's super grateful for his help. The judge texts, just used my superpowers. And then, my desk still has butt marks on it.
This looks like a firing squad.
A Nashville judge learns the Channel 4 I-Team approaching his bench was just the beginning. Now he faces the feds. A criminal indictment and stunning claims of a cover-up puts a Nashville judge in handcuffs.
Judge Moreland appeared in court the way he's used to seeing the defendants before him, shackled hand and foot. The U.S. Attorney's Office announced they took him into custody because they feared he was jeopardizing their investigation.
Just in the last weeks, they say Moreland attempted to pay a $5,000 bribe to get a witness to recant her story. She's not named in the complaint, but it's Natalie Amos. She told the Channel 4 I-Team she had sex with Moreland and that he dropped her fines and fees and prevented her arrest during a traffic stop. The U.S. Attorney's Office says Moreland used a go-between to try to get Amos to sign an affidavit saying it was all a lie. The criminal complaint also says Moreland tried to get a police officer to plant drugs in Amos's car in an attempt to destroy her credibility.
Investigators say an old friend of Casey Moreland's admits he was planning on helping the former judge discredit Natalie Amos.
I said, so if you pulled Natalie over and she had drugs on her, that wouldn't look good. He said, no, that wouldn't look good at all.
Prosecutors say that's the friend's voice, talking to Moreland, seen in this video. He's reportedly talking about planting drugs in Natalie's car and then having a police officer pull her over. It's all recorded because that friend was approached by the FBI. Prosecutors say that friend agreed to be an informant in hopes of receiving leniency. Moreland reportedly offered to pay Natalie thousands to take back everything she said during the I-Team's exclusive interview. He wanted her to sign this affidavit for $6,000. She was supposed to say she was paid by Channel 4 to do the interview. She was not paid. Natalie told our I-Team she wanted to do the interview because she was scared for her life.
She does know she's got to read it out loud, and you record her, don't you?
I'm gonna tell her. I'll do my best.
Investigators say Natalie never had plans to sign it, but the informant led Moreland to believe she would, and Moreland was ready to offer up more money.
We'll take care of whoever on the back end too.
Okay.
If I have to have a little more, we'll have a little more.
In some of the conversations, Moreland gets personal.
Will you ask her one question? Why? Why would you do this to me?
Okay.
And in a later conversation,
Tell her this.
Yes, sir, Judge.
Tell her I am so sorry that I did not ever mean anything like this to happen, and it ain't my fault.
There is much more than what was outlined in today's complaint. The I-Team's investigations have covered a lot of ground in the last 2 months and showed why there are additional questions of improper influence and troubling behavior.
This looks like a firing squad.
In January, when the Channel 4 I-Team first went before Judge Casey Moreland to ask for comment about our findings, this was his reaction. It all started with the woman at the center of the criminal investigation, Natalie Amos. She's only ever done an interview with our Nancy Amons, and it was Nancy who first obtained all those text messages between Amos and the judge. Text messages that indicate the two had a sexual relationship and that Moreland helped Amos get out of traffic tickets and other court fines. Nancy also exposed Moreland's ties to Amos's friend, Lee Terry. Amos claims Terry had sex with Moreland in order to get out of a DUI charge.
She was like, Natalie, I was out of options. It was that, or I was looking at serious jail time.
A police investigation revealed that after a vacation with Moreland and attorney Brian Lewis, Terry threatened to expose her relationship with Lewis and then killed herself. Terry's friends are calling for her death investigation to be reopened.
I just want it investigated, really investigated.
The Channel 4 I-Team's Demetria Kaladimos then exposed court records that indicate Moreland intervened on his future son-in-law's DUI case, prompting the district attorney to say in a statement, "These facts are very disturbing."
Lucas is trying to do everything he can to get me out before 10 days.
I exposed another question of influence that surfaced in jail phone calls of a participant in Moreland's drug court who was secretly engaged to Moreland's courthouse deputy.
He thinks the only thing that'll stop it from happening is the fact that he would back you to the judge.
After these phone calls, where that inmate claimed the deputy was trying to help her, Moreland dismissed her probation violation. And our investigations broadened, exposing Moreland's troubled history with alcohol, and how the judge, who not only started a drug court, but also a human trafficking court, referred to some defendants as junkies and hoes, all leading to a national expert on judicial ethics to say this.
If what is reported here is true, this may not be a judge who is well suited to the bench.